All right, so good afternoon. Our guest today is Anna Szlávi, a linguist who's working in Scandinavia. Um, so let's start out with Anna. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure.
What do you do?
Thank you, Petro. Thank you for the invitation. Like you said, my name is Anna Szlávi, and pronunciation was perfect.
Thank you.
Originally, I come from Hungary, but right now I work in Norway. And right now I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, which is located in Trondheim, and it's actually the largest university in Norway. So I'm very lucky to be working here right now.
What languages do you work with?
So during my master's, I was involved in English and Italian. So those were my main kind of focuses. But during my time in the Italian studies, I was also lucky to learn other Romance languages. So I was focusing on all kinds of dialects within Lombardian, so like Northern Italian. But also I learned a little bit of Portuguese, a little bit of French, and actually outside of university, I learned Spanish for personal reasons. So I would say that with Romance languages, I'm quite familiar. But I would say that I've done most of my research focusing on English, and during my PhD focusing on Hungarian. So I would say these are my main fields of expertise. And of course, now that I'm in Norway, I've been exposed to Norwegian. I'm learning Norwegian now, I think B1 or something like that. And if I want to continue working here, then I need to master the language and actually focus on the connections between Norwegian and English, which are quite nice. So those of you who know any Norwegian are familiar that Norwegian is quite similar to English and German in certain respects. But of course, because of its various dialects, I would say that's what is really interesting and challenging about Norwegian.
So there's lots of Norwegian dialects, huh?
So Norway is a very large country, and not just large, but very long and thin, or narrow, I would say. And because of this, or on top of this, there are not a lot of people living here. So for example, Hungary, which is a small country, has like 9-10 million people, and Norway, I think only like 5. And the size of the country is, I think, among the largest in Europe. So because of this kind of large distance between people living here, dialects could really develop distinctly. And let's say, as opposed to Hungarian, here in Norway, regional dialects have a kind of high status. So you would be exposed to all kinds of dialects on TV from politicians. So it takes a lot of time for us learners to get comfortable with it. But it also means that when we are comfortable with Norwegian, then it's much easier to understand also Swedish and Danish, while it's not so easy for Danish speakers and Swedish speakers on the other way around, because they are much more used to one kind of variety of their language.
So that's interesting. It's also the popular ability, the common man's ability to understand dialects is different in different countries. To not stigmatize them and even to understand them at all. That's interesting. Do you have any theories on why there's a lack of stigmatization in Norway of non-standard dialects?
These are definitely just theories, not that I've done research about it. I think part of it comes from the fact that one of the kind of main values here in Norway is equality. I think it's really also connected to language. I mean, it would be quite hypocritical to put one language variation above the others if the main value is equality. Plus, the other thing is that during the history of Norway, it had several different capitals. So there was a time when Trondheim was the capital, and here it's like the Trondelag dialect is what is being spoken, while there was also a long period when Bergen was the capital, which is like on the west coast, which has also a specific dialect. And nowadays it's Oslo, which again has the Eastern variety. So I would say that also the historical perspective is important here. But I would say it's more definitely this idea of equality, which is very prevalent in the country.
Fascinating. Well, on another track, I wanted to ask you, you made a transition from linguistics to computer science. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. So originally I was focusing on linguistics, and I did work in Hungary with linguistics in several universities. But I would say that the reason why I transitioned to computer science was both personal and maybe political, we can say. So in Hungary, gender studies, which has been my focus in linguistics, has been banned, so to say. Well, not so to say. There's no possibility to study gender studies in Hungary. The concept of gender has been ridiculed and kind of stripped of any kind of scientific relevance. And especially in social sciences, it has been very hard to work in Hungary independently, not in the service of government propaganda. And since I really, really believed in this topic, and my topic is gender equality, I wanted to find ways to be able to contribute to equality. And I realized that computer science or technologies is really a great field from the respect that there it's not only like a social justice aspect to fight for gender equality, but also like a technical aspect, which even the industry really supports. And I came to see that if there's support from the industry, there's money. If there's money in it, then you can actually work with it. And basically this was my original idea. And then when I entered the field, I also realized that scientifically speaking, it's a very relevant step for me to join this field, because I realized that there's an openness towards interdisciplinary research. And since there's the problem of let's say the diversity crisis within computer science, they really look for social scientists, so people who have relations to humanities and social sciences. And basically let's say the added value to the field is to create research and take part in initiatives and interventions which bring together computer science and social sciences or social aspects. So I would say this is a transition here. In certain contexts, it's easy to understand, but in other contexts, which are, let's say, more traditional, I do need to explain a lot what I'm doing in computer science with my linguistics background.
Very cool. And how do you like it? How do you like this the field of computer science compared to linguistics?
Yeah, why I got kind of a little frozen here is because I was thinking, should I compare it? So what I would say is that right now, when I only focus on computer science, I realize it's a very accepting field, at least the way I experience it. And I have to say that I do take part in specifically gender equality or diversity related conferences and research groups. So I think that also kind of not limits, but makes it pretty welcoming. So I would say that my experience here in the field is very pleasant, and I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to be able to work here. but if you really ask me to compare with linguistics, of course, I miss linguistics. I miss focusing more on language. And basically what I miss the most is being able to teach, because right now I'm not teaching. So now I'm doing research in computer science, which is great. But I think science education has not gotten to the point when the courses in computer science include a lot of social sciences subjects. So right now, for example, one of my papers is focusing on the analysis of how computer science programs define their learning objectives, how they define what compulsory courses are. And basically what we can see is it's all technology. So right now, it's still through technical skills that computer science is being taught or being conceived of, even if there's this very strong push to introduce the social aspect, to teach students that they are actually designing for the real world, to society, which requires social considerations. So why I'm saying this is that I really hope that at some point there will be a need for teachers who focus on not just technical skills like teaching Python, let's say, but also on social aspects like inclusive design or gender inclusion within software or the IT sector.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you about some of your past work for the EUGAIN project. Could you tell us what that was about and what that project was?
So thank you for the question. Like I mentioned before, I've had the chance to take part in certain initiatives and interventions which focus specifically on gender equality in computer science, and EUGAIN is one of them. Your viewers from the US may not be familiar with the framework. So EUGAIN is a Horizon Europe framework, which means that the EU provides money for it, which is actually pretty great. The money goes for networking events and basically bringing together scholars from across Europe to do research together, to organize conferences together, and to have certain projects which aim to enhance gender balance. So this is partly like a networking initiative, partly like interventions. For example, recently we have launched a social media campaign in which we try to reach out to Gen Z, so younger people, to make computer science more attractive for them, because right now we still see that there's, there are too few people working in the tech field, even though I know that now there's this wave of laying off people in the tech industry, but generally there's a high demand for tech workers. And there's a need for making it more attractive, especially for minority or minoritized groups such as women, or, well, basically not just global northern white heterosexual men, which is currently the main demographics for the field. So EUGAIN tries to launch campaigns, organize conferences. I just returned from Edinburgh a couple of days ago from one of our conferences, which is the European, Computer Science Summit. Last year, the focus was specifically on gender balance. Now it was more leadership. But of course, several of us from EUGAIN were there, and our goal is to kind of make a network composed of people who are interested in this work, and also who are happy to share experiences, best practices, because in several European countries there are initiatives that work or try to work for the inclusion of women. So basically, it's also about sharing practices and how to make a lasting change.
Very cool. And what's on the horizon? Do you have any projects in the future that you want to work on next? Or are you still concentrating on your current project?
Yes. So, yes, thank you. So, EUGAIN is about to finish. So we have one more year in EUGAIN. So there, the goal would be to kind of wrap up, to create like a Springer volume. So kind of to show physical result of our kind of 4 years of working together. And make some policy recommendations and recommendations for universities how to kind of change or how to modify the computer science education. But on top of this, I have another project which has just started. This is an Erasmus Plus, so again, EU-funded project called Women STEM-UP, which is a kind of a smaller project because EUGAIN has like 150 members, while this one has about 10. So you can see the size differences. But here, our specific goal is to make STEM, or well, more specifically, computer science education more gender inclusive. My specific role is to focus on language. So how in classes or in materials, language needs to be changed in order to make it more inclusive. Because right now, there are a number of ways that the current languages contributes to gender inequality, or like an inhospitable environment for women, I would say. So this is the current focus or future focus.
So English, like the verbs, they don't really change according to gender, but some of the titles do. For example, waiter, waitress, actor, actress. Is that the kind of direction you're looking in, or is it something else?
Partly, yes. Pronouns, for example, is a very crucial part of it. In the US, singular they has been pretty much in the focus. In Norwegian, there's also like a third gender, or like a neutral gender pronoun, which can be used, but it's not as usual as like in American English. In Hungarian, we are lucky because we don't have gendered pronouns. So I would say that Hungarian as a language itself is pretty great regarding inclusivity. There it's much more social practices which need to change. So yes, I would say it's the word endings that you're referring to, the pronouns that I just mentioned. But as simple as looking at textbooks and course materials about the examples they use, the pictures they use, which also tend to be pretty gendered many times, or the topics. Because research also shows that women are motivated by different kind of topics or different kind of tasks than men. And currently, course materials are pretty focused on, one kind of motivating, one kind of topics, which are not very inclusive.
Interesting. And I wanted to ask you about Hungarian. Like you said, there's no gendered pronouns. It's just one pronoun for all the genders, right? U. And I wanted to ask though, like, what about like names of professions, like doctor or doktornő? Is that controversial in Hungarian? Is that a problem? What's the situation with that? In Poland, it's kind of controversial for a lot of reasons.
I would say that language is not the main issue in Hungary. Of course, there are certain professions which tend to be more used with the word that has the feminine ending, like addition, like óvónő, like kindergarten teacher is typically a woman in Hungarian language and also in reality. but I would say that it's not so much language, or at least not vocabulary or the lexicon, which is the problem. It's the discourse that is being used by the current government, which is being used in the media. And why that is a really serious problem is that the government changed a lot of media laws, which made it possible that basically they own most of the media in Hungary, which means they own most of the discourse in Hungary. So I would say that it's much more how women are being taught about, or how men are being taught about, that is the problem. So more like a sociolinguistics issue rather than like a morphology issue.
Substance, not form, right, is the main issue. Interesting. So speaking about politics, have you been following the language situation in Ukraine with the language laws, with minority languages, minoritized languages? Is that something on your radar, or not necessarily?
Yeah, so not so much. I mean, I was a part of another EU project, which is focusing on the connection between computer science and linguistics, and one of the subgroups was actually like language rights and minority language rights. So I do know a little bit of it, but it has never really been in my main focus. And I would say the reason for that is that Hungary is a very homogeneous country. Like 93% of the population is Hungarian and speaks Hungarian. So I want to say I went with the flow, where I would say that it never was so much in my picture. In Hungary, how this is being talked about, again, because of the current political situation, is how Hungarian or Hungarian speakers in, let's say, Slovakia or in Romania are being treated. So not how we Hungarians can treat our minority speakers better.
So on a practical matter, we're working on a language machine translation engine that works into and out of minority languages in our region. And as you know, in Slavic, there's 3 grammatical genders, whereas in Hungarian, there's 1. In English, there's arguably 1. So we have to, when we translate into the Slavic languages, pick a gender, masculine, feminine, neuter, that we're going to translate into. And the question is, do we default to masculine gender, feminine gender, neuter gender? Or do we, if it's talking about a kindergarten teacher, for example, do we default to the feminine gender? Or if it's talking about a firefighter or a fireman, do we default to the male based on the context? What gender is most likely? Or to give the user the chance to pick the gender that they want the translation into? I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on the assumption of gender in machine translation.
Yeah, so I did take part in AI-related workshops, and that was more focusing on like HR. But the conclusion that I feel that I've built for myself is that whenever machine translation or whatever AI is basing its guesses on practice, then it's perpetrating the same kind of stereotypes that we are not happy with. Or, well, when I say we as, let's say, social scientists. So I would say that it would be great if it was the user who could have the chance to decide, and not AI, because AI would use would female kindergarten teacher, because that's what we have in Hungarian. But this way, there's no way to escape this box. So if you could make this open, make this up to the user, that would be pretty great.
I think it's definitely technically possible. Thanks for your input on that. I'll see what I can do.
What is the one thing that stood out most to you in this interview?
What's the one thing that stood out most to me in this interview? that the future seems to be computer science and hard science as opposed to linguistics and social science, which might be closer to our hearts, but it seems like we can affect more real world change and make the world a better place more through computer science and programming and Python as opposed to field linguistics, unfortunately. But that just seems the direction the world's headed in. And yeah, it's cool to talk with someone that also has made the transition from linguist to computer scientist. Yeah, and I have to agree. And I'm glad that we can solve a lot of these gender issues, inclusivity issues through technology. Like, for example, allowing the user to pick their preferred gender in the machine translation. So that really stood out to me. Well, yes. I'm sure the audience would be interested in finding your work. Where is the best place for us to read your work, to find your work, to connect with you?
I think if you Google me, it usually directs to either ResearchGate or academia, to which I uploaded most of my works in the name of open science. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And if you also check my NTNU account, so my current university's account, you'll find information both about EUGAIN that we talked about now and several of the papers that I made reference to. But I'm also happy to kind of leave these accounts in the I don't know, chat or send it to you. And I'm very happy to get emails, messages, and comments. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. We'll put the links in the description so the audience can click and go. So academy.eu and LinkedIn would be some good ways to be in touch with you, if I understood correctly.
And ResearchGate.
So anything else as we wrap up? I think your room's about to be out of time.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity. And I wish you good luck with the machine learning project. And it would be really great if we could make one step toward freeing the world and AI from these stereotypes.
Absolutely. And put the power back in the hands of the user. Right. Well, thanks so much, Anna, for joining me and taking time out of your busy day.
Thank you.
And, my pleasure. Well, have a great weekend, and
thank
I'll
you,
make
and
sure...
enjoy your stay in Central Europe.
Thank you. I sure am. Okay. Well, take care, Anna.
Bye.
Bye-bye.